Hello learners, today we are going to look at a piece of Indian writing in English, the novel Kanthapura by Raja Rao. So, the objectives of the lesson are to introduce the novel and the novelist, to study the significance of the preface to the novel, and to look at the events in the novel and study it as an Indian novel. Kanthapura, published in 1938, is the novel for which Raja Rao is most remembered, although his Sahitya Academy award winning novel is The Serpent and the Rope. Raja Rao spent his early years in India before going to France for study and finally settled down in the US. Kanthapura describes the freedom struggle in India as played out in a small Indian village. The preface to the novel expresses the novelist's views about the use of English in India. The story of the novel is absorbing, with its various events in the freedom struggle described in detail alongside the description of the village and its people. Murthy is the character who is influenced by Gandhi and his ideals. Gandhi is a looming presence in the novel, guiding the various characters. Kanthapura is also a distinctly Indian novel with its special narrative and language. The author of Kanthapura, Raja Rao, comes from a very old South Indian Brahmin family. He was born in 1909 in the village of Hassan in Mysore in Karnataka. His father was a professor of canneries in Hyderabad. After matriculating from Hyderabad, he went to Aligarh for higher education. There he came into contact with Professor D'Ascension, who inspired him to study French language and literature. He took his BA from Nizam College, Hyderabad. He was awarded a scholarship by the university, and on this scholarship he went to France to continue his study of French literature. He studied at the University of Montpellier and worked for the doctorate degree at the University of Sorbonne under the guidance of Professor Kazamian. After living in France for a number of years, he moved to the USA, where he taught in the University of Austin till his death in 2006. Raja Rao was in India from 1940 to 46 and had also participated in the Quit India movement. The nationalist influence on his life is evident in his works, especially in Kanthapura, his first novel, which was written in 1938 when he was in France. His other works include The Serpent and the Rope in 1960, a semi-autobiographical novel which is about the spiritual search for truth, and the other novels The Cat and Shakespeare in 1965, Comrade Kirillov 1976, The Chess Master and His Moves 1988, and a number of other short stories. His strengths are his encyclopedic knowledge and his style of writing, which is essentially Indian. But these are considered as his weaknesses by some critics, who are of the opinion that he is not able to control his materials and his style of writing is too belabored and meandering. However, Raja Rao is considered by most as one of the best, if not the best, writers to emerge on the Indo-Anglican literary scene. Bearing testimony to this fact is that he has been awarded the Neustadt International Prize in 1988, the Padma Bhushan in 1968, the posthumous Padma Vibhushan in 2007, besides the Sahitya Academy Award in 1964 for The Serpent and the Rope, among many others. The preface to Kanthapura, written by Raja Rao, is as important a document as the novel itself. The preface addresses a few issues that are important not just to the context of the novel, but also issues in relation to the Indian writing in English. Style and Indianness, the use of English by the Indians, and the art of storytelling by Indians are some of the topics that are dealt with in the preface. Raja Rao states that every Indian village has a Sthala Purana or tales associated with the place in question. These myths are inexorably linked with mythical characters from the Ramayana, Mahabharata and other epics. Kanthapura deals with Gandhi, who had become more than just a person. He had become a myth. Raja Rao also speaks about his style of narration, the Indian style. Indians like to speak a lot, and as a result, Indian literary works are also long. Raja Rao cites the Ramayana and Mahabharata as the examples for that. It is this breathless episodic way of narration that Raja Rao tries to bring into his novel. So he makes clear that Kanthapura is not to be judged by Western notions of narration. Raja Rao next deals with the issue of English by Indians. He confesses that there are problems with this, as one has to convey in a language that is not one's own a spirit that is one's own. English is not an alien language, he says, but one of the languages spoken by the multilingual Indian. But one should not write like the natives of the language, but invent an idiom to suit one's own sensibility. Raja Rao hopes that the Indian idiom will develop to a prominence as distinctive as that of the American English or Irish English. Thus, important issues are addressed in the preface to Kanthapura. All these theories are brought into practice in Kanthapura. Gandhi is presented as a mythical character. The long narrative is exactly like the rambling story that Raja Rao promises, and the author does come up with an Indian idiom. Kanthapura 1938 is the novel with which Raja Rao made his debut. It is considered by many to be his magnum opus. It is one of the most satisfying novels by Raja Rao. It is a portrayal of the Gandhian struggle for the freedom of the country. It is vivid and realistic despite being written in France, thousands of miles away from India. Raja Rao has participated in the Quit India movement in 1942 and had witnessed the influence of Gandhi first hand. He used this experience to depict the impact of Gandhi in the villages of India. Gandhi himself is not seen in the novel, but he is a presence hard to ignore. He is omniscient through his movements and the myths surrounding him. Murthy is not just the mediator between Gandhi and Kanthapura. He also becomes the Kanthapurian version of Gandhi. He becomes an outcast while leading the villagers towards independence. The manner in which the nationalist movement influenced every single person in the village is shown in an absorbing manner. The hope that the Indians had for independence comes through in Kanthapura. The villagers look forward to independence as the event that would bring them Ramarajya, or the government run by a benevolent ruler. The religious strand of the novel is also important. Mythical characters such as Rama, Shiva and others are invoked in this freedom struggle. The novel is significant as it is completely Indian in tone and treatment. The narrator, the old woman Achaka, is the typical Indian grandmother, digressing and judgmental. The text of Kanthapura does not just have words directly translated from the local language Kannada, but also literal translations of phrases and proverbs from the vernacular. The novel was thus instrumental in creating an Indian English language. Murthy, a young man, digs out a half-sunk Shivalinga and suggests it should be cleaned and worshipped in a temple built for it. This temple leads to festivals being celebrated, and on the occasion of Shankar Jayanti, a Harikatha discourse is arranged. This Harikatha is actually political propaganda in disguise, because it speaks of Gandhi and Swaraj, equating these issues with that of gods, for which the Harikatha man is arrested. Murthy and others burn foreign clothes and formally become nationalists. The policeman Bade Khan comes to the village to quell signs of unrest. Also hostile to the nationalist movement is Bhatta, a money lender and a government agent. Murthy comes armed with propaganda material and charkas from the city. He tells the villagers about the ideals of Gandhi and urges them to spin the charka. Ratnamma, her father Ramakrishnaya, and the widowed young girl Ratna are his helpers. In this endeavor, he goes out of the Brahmin quarter to the other quarters. This saddens his mother Narsamma, who is instigated by Bhatta. With the fear of excommunication haunting her, she commits suicide. The scene then shifts to the Skeffington coffee estate. The entry of the policeman Bade Khan strengthens the oppression by the management. Murthy decides to teach the coolies not just Gandhism but also reading and writing. He is stopped at the entrance of the estate by Bade Khan. A scuffle ensues where Bade Khan is roughed up by the coolies. Murthy decides to go on a fast for 3 days, holding himself responsible for the violence at the coffee estate. He then starts the "Don't Touch the Government" campaign. He speaks of his plans to start a Congress party committee and gets approval from Patel Rangegowda and the other village elders. The Congress committee is formed, fee is collected and pledges are taken to spin the charka every day. Murthy's picture appears in the newspaper and the villagers are pleased. Bhatta tries to stop the movement by charging a higher rate of interest for the Congress members. When his ploy doesn't work, he decides to enlist the help of Waterfall Venkamma for his purposes by fixing a match for her daughter. The police soon arrive to arrest Murthy. Several villagers are beaten up and arrested. Everyone except Murthy is released the next day. Developments occur suddenly in the village, with the Patelgiri of Rangegowda being suspended. People of the village are eager for news from Karwar, where Murthy is held. Murthy is sentenced to 3 months of rigorous imprisonment for instigating the pariahs against the government. Old Ramakrishnaya dies and there is double sorrow in Kanthapura. Rangamma becomes the leader of the Congress activities and forms the women's corps, the Sevika Sangha, where she trains them to be prepared to face the blows of the lathis of the policemen. Murthy is released and he comes back with a renewed vigor. Gandhi's non-violent campaign against salt tax begins. Gandhi finally produces salt at Dandi. Murthy prepares the villagers for the non-violent struggle to ensue. The non-cooperation movement begins in Kanthapura, where a parallel government is established with Rangegowda as the People's Patel. It is decided that the taxes will not be paid to the government. Men and women alike picket Borana's toddy grove fearlessly on Murthy's instructions. They are beaten and arrested, and many of them are left far away from Kanthapura to walk back by themselves. The people return to Kanthapura with much difficulty and are victoriously welcomed. The next activity is to prevent the coolies of the coffee estate from drinking from the toddy booth, for which the satyagrahis sit in front of the shop. The police beat up the satyagrahis. The movement is a success, with other villagers emulating it. The government fortifies the village and arrests Murthy and Rangamma. Women are beaten up and dishonored. The government auctions the farms of the villagers and brings coolies from the city to help them with the work. The villagers march towards their fields. Coolies from the Skeffington estate also help them. The policemen hound the satyagrahis, who finally set fire to Kanthapura and settle down in the village of Kashipur. They are hopeful of independence. Murthy shifts allegiance to Nehru, but is still part of the freedom struggle. The novel, a primarily Western art form, is adapted wonderfully well by Raja Rao to Indian sensibilities. If judged by Western standards, the novel is likely to be disappointing, as a few critics think. But Kanthapura has to be primarily understood as an Indian novel. Kanthapura is a village novel. The distinctive features of an Indian village, such as the gossip mongers, the landscape, the village deity, and the petty villains, are painted effectively by the author. The novel also depicts the impact of Gandhian freedom struggle on a remote village in India. The events that take place in Kanthapura under the impact of the Gandhian non-violent, non-cooperation movement happened all over in India between 1919 and 1930, when Gandhi transformed the entire nation into an army of disciplined and non-violent freedom fighters. The political, religious and social strands of the Gandhian movement, a distinctly Indian movement, are woven into the complex story of the novel. The various myths that are used in the novel also make it Indian. Gandhi is referred to at different times as Shiva and as Rama, the two mythical characters in India. The Indian woman too is considered in various forms of the goddess Shakti. The Indian woman is not just portrayed as a docile being, but also as being firm. Ratna is an example of the strong woman in Kanthapura. Shakti worship is an essentially Indian theme. The treatment of the novel is also typically Indian. The Indian grandmother, who has always been the storyteller in India, is the narrator in the novel. Achaka's narrative is a breathless one, which is again an Indian phenomenon, as pointed out by Rajarao himself. The organization of the words in the novel is also Indian. Indian idiom and Indian imagery can be found throughout Kanthapura. Numerous words and proverbs are literally translated from Kannada, while some are directly used, such as dhoti, harikatha, maistri, etc. Even the abuses used by the peasant folk are raw and Indian in tone. In conclusion, we could say that the author pulls several strings in the novel together in terms of covering several issues within its broader canvas. Murthy fights orthodoxy at the social level and the British at the political level. The role of woman is not marginalized as in the other post-colonial novels, such as Nissim Ezekiel's Latter-day Psalms and Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children. There is the same identity crisis and the post-colonial attempt to go back to the roots. The first thing that Murthy does is to explore the potential of religion for moving the people beyond dormancy. The society ridden with caste hierarchy is involved in Sankara Purnima, Kartik Purnima, Ganesh Jayanti and Dasera. But Murthy does not encourage casteism. He goes to the pariah quarters in spite of the threat from Swami the priest of excommunication. The subtle subversion of the Harikatha to the allegory of India's freedom is quite interesting. All these are microcosmic presentation of the macrocosmic reality, but fictionalized for presenting the traditional Indian society, which is in the quest for its roots. The crisis of identity is another factor of the post-colonial literature. But in Kanthapura, the colonial novel of 1938, the post-colonial trends are quite apparent, particularly visible in the efforts of the people for creating national myths to decolonize the mind of the people of Kanthapura, which is a smaller microcosm of India itself. The simple happenings, including the fight against the British colonialism at the Skeffington Coffee Estate, give us a clear picture of the decolonization process. On the other hand, it records the feminist inclination of the novelist with female characters like Ratna, Rangamma and Venkamma playing lead roles in the novel. Thus, the novel is a link to the post-colonial thinking, although it belongs to the colonial period. In fact, this is where the novel appeals most to us. Gandhism, which is a process of decolonization, is presented through the ironic, confessional and objective mode. The delightful dimension is added through the idealistic character of Murthy. Never before has the colonial transformation been depicted so faithfully as in Kanthapura, linking the colonial with the post-colonial. Hope you enjoyed this lesson. In the next class, we are going to have part 2 of Kanthapura, another lesson on Kanthapura, which is going to deal with the various characters in the novel, the narrative style of the novel and an analysis of the Gandhian struggle for freedom as presented in the novel. Thank you.